Ongais undoubtedly is the most exciting race driver to come on the scene in any type of racing in a great number of years. He thrills the crowd, and he frequently thrills the competitors on the Speedway in some of his daring moves in the corner, in the straightaways, wherever he sees an opening. If he can get to the front, that is the only place he is content to run.
And now you're looking at one of the great names in auto racing, Danny Ongais.
If there was ever a race car driver surrounded by mystery, it was Danny Ongais. He was a man known for two things. No one had more bravery, and no one spoke less.
Green flag pit stop has given the lead to the flying Hawaiian, Danny Ongais.
Danny Ongais, his nickname is Danny on the ES, and he's on it right now.
Nicknamed him the ghost from the coast, because you never knew when he was going to show up.
He'd either win a race or be leading when he fell out. A true embodiment of if you're not first, you're last.
And perhaps a big key to that durability is in Danny's throttle foot. He has been known as a car breaker. Perhaps he has learned to pace himself just a bit.
People said Ongais was tough on equipment and drove hard all the time. A Hawaiian whose on-track attitude was the complete opposite of his behavior off-track. He spoke like he thought his words would be used against him. His answers were careful, thoughtful, and often very short.
Well, for a first outing with the new Chevrolet V6, you got to be impressed with the power it makes.
We're enthused.
Thank you, Danny.
That's about as enthused as Danny Ongais gets it.
You know, I'm not sure anybody can say they really know Danny Ongais. He's such a private person. They're not even really sure, I don't think, how old he is or what his home address is.
In a 1978 interview, Mickey Thompson said Danny's quiet nature was part being shy, but also protecting people around him. I know of 3 or 4 crashes he had that were mechanical failures, but he never pointed his finger at anyone. A newspaperman will ask him what happened, and he won't want to say, because that would put one of his mechanics in a bad light. So he gets a bad name because of it. It's too bad people don't realize what the real Danny Ongais is like. He's his own worst enemy because of his reluctance to talk, but he's absolutely a full-blown super guy.
He left the racetrack. He's not at his most loquacious best, and you know Dan's sometimes a pretty tight-lipped even when he's in the best of moods, and he was very unhappy when he left here.
I'm not a mystery man. People call me that, and I don't like it. I'm just a private person.
And Ongais strongly disliked those stories that focus on a driver's family, believing they had nothing to do with racing and shouldn't be on public display. He said in a 1979 interview, "My personal life and my family have nothing to do with racing, so I don't want to talk about them. It's not that I'm hiding anything, it's just that they are private people, not stories for some magazine. I see all this attention focused on drivers' personal lives. I just don't see where it does anybody any good."
Oh my God, the terrible crash. I think it's Danny Ongais.
It's for those reasons that Ongais kept to himself, and why a lot of what's known about him is wrong. He became a sort of tall tale in racing, a man who showed up to a race, broke the track record, kept quiet, and retreated back to where he came from. No matter how he's described, without a doubt, Danny Ongais was exciting. The story of Danny Ongais and his Hawaiian background started with his grandparents, who moved to the islands from Puerto Rico in 1906. Puerto Rican families, like those of Danny's father and mother, were recruited by Hawaiian sugar plantations after hurricanes destroyed sugar production in the Caribbean. In those days, the family name was Ongais. In the 1920s, when Danny's father, Dan Ongais, was a young child in school, a teacher asked for his name, misheard what he said, and wrote down Ongais instead. With the birth certificate not on hand, the young man had a new name on documents from this point forward, and the family name was changed. Dan Ongais Sr. was a minister in a Baptist church, and later in life owned a piano shop in Maui. When he was 24 years old, he and his wife, Jenny, welcomed the birth of their first son, Ezekiel Daniel Ongais. For a man whose life was mysterious, even his birth had a secret. All sources list his birth in 1942, but in a 1978 interview, Dan Ongais Sr. said his son was actually born in 1939. This is confirmed with the 1940 and 1950 census reports. Born in Happy Valley, on the island of Maui, Danny was just 2 years old during the attacks on Pearl Harbor. As a child, Danny's parents separated, and he spent much time with his grandparents. After graduating from high school, Danny joined the Army and was stationed in Europe as a paratrooper. There, he developed a love for motorcycles after buying one in England. After a 2-year enlistment, he returned to Hawaii and began racing motorcycles. By 1960, he was the Hawaiian champion motorcycle racer. In early 1960, Ongais began running sports car races, set up at temporary tracks on airstrips. On March 20th, he won a race for novices, driving a Corvette. Ironically, that race also included another future racing superstar in Peter Revson, who finished 8th. As he advanced in his career, these early races gave Danny a chip on his shoulder, made him feel like an outsider. "I had done a little sports car racing there before I left," Ongais said in 1979. "A few years ago, I needed the people in the sports car club there to sign a paper verifying that experience, but none of those buggers would sign. They just said, 'Hey, we don't remember you.' Bull! They didn't want to remember. Those sports car guys were a bunch of snooty phonies. You know, driving Jaguars and smoking pipes. They thought guys like me were dirt." On July 12, 1960, Danny married his wife Ann. The couple soon welcomed 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. But Danny was a racer, not a surfer, and his life better aligned with the booming hot rod culture of Southern California. From 1962 forward, the man later known as the Flying Hawaiian moved to the mainland and identified as a Californian. Ongais was conflicted about his time in Hawaii, later resenting how photographers would ask him to hold pineapples in pictures, but also the way he and fellow racers were treated in Hawaii. In a 1979 interview with Sport magazine, he asked, "How long do I have to live in California before I'm not Hawaiian Danny Ongais anymore? Hell, I've lived around Los Angeles for 16 years. When are reporters going to stop asking me about surfing and hula girls? You know what really pisses me off about Hawaii? I win a few races in USAC and I'm out there at Indy, and every radio, TV station, and newspaper in Hawaii is calling me up, bothering me, and telling me that they're claiming me as homegrown. Hell, when I lived there, they treated me like a bum. Motorcycle and drag racing were dirty words. The politicians were always trying to close down the tracks, and the police were raiding them. And now, after I've made it, those same people want to be buddy-buddy. Well, I'm not buying it."
I was born in Hawaii. I enjoyed it very much. And yet I have to owe mostly what has happened to me in motorsports to the fellows that I spent the last half of my life with in California.
In California during the 60s, the main form of motorsports was drag racing. After a few years of working on cars and racing his own equipment, Ongais became a drag racing star in 1963, driving a dragster called the Chevy 2, named that because everyone else raced Chevy engines too. Ongais was the gas dragster national champion for 1963. And in February 1964, Danny won the NHRA's Winter Nationals in the top gas category, taking a surprise win over Mickey Thompson. In June of that year, Ongais had a memorable run in the Hot Rod Magazine Championships at Riverside. In a semifinal matchup, Ongais' motor stalled at the starting line, while his opponent was disqualified for jumping the start. Danny got out and pushed his car down the track and across the finish. It took him 1 minute and 55 seconds with a speed of 3 miles per hour, but Danny made it to the finals, which he then won at 172 miles per hour, earning $1,500 and a new Ford Mustang. Unlike today, where the NHRA holds 20 national events per year, back in the 60s there were only a few national events and dozens of regional events. And there were many other drag racing organizations, like the AHRA and IHRA. Danny's success is spread across many series and local events, but in 1964 he repeated as the #1 gas dragster racer in the country.
They're away. The next race was Danny Ongais and Rick Stewart, and Ongais fouled, so Rick Stewart is the winner and will move ahead.
In 1965, Ongais moved to the top fuel category, driving a dragster called the Mangler. That year, he was part of a group of Americans who brought their cars to Europe to race. Ongais became the first person to exceed 200 miles per hour on a European drag strip. Over the next few years, he remained one of the most well-known drag racers in the country, but he had his eyes toward other forms of racing too. In 1967, Ongais made his first trip to the Indianapolis 500 as part of a special training program with Goodyear. Drivers who hoped to run at Indy would shadow current drivers, meet mechanics, and work on pit crews so they would have experience when their time came to race. Ongais was part of Roger McCluskey's team for the month and changed tires during the race. By 1968, Ongais made his step towards racing at Indy when he joined forces with Mickey Thompson, one of the most well-known racers in the hot rodding culture. Mickey Thompson wasn't just a drag racer, he also built some of the most radical cars to ever enter the Indianapolis 500. They first went to Hanford Speedway in California, where Danny hit an exhaust pipe in practice and the car caught fire. Then at Phoenix, he failed to qualify. With no race experience, Danny's entry in the Indy 500 was denied. In September 1968, Thompson and Ongais went to the Bonneville Salt Flats to set speed and endurance records for Ford driving a stock Mustang. Alternating time behind the wheel, they averaged 157 miles per hour, driving 24 hours straight. In total, they broke 295 speed records.
The Mach 1 stages against the Camaro of schoolteacher Kelly Chadwick from Texas. An anxious moment for trackside photographers as Chadwick narrowly misses the rail before shutting off. Ongais flashes through in 7.38 seconds.
By the late 60s, the new category in drag racing was funny cars. In 1969, Ongais drove a new Mustang funny car for Thompson. It can be said that Ongais was one of the first superstars of funny car racing with a record-setting year. In addition to winning 90% of all regional races he entered, Ongais won the NHRA Spring Nationals in Dallas, the U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis. His was the first funny car to run a quarter mile under 7 seconds when he ran 6.9 seconds in Kansas. While the NHRA wouldn't award a championship for funny cars until 1974, he was named National Funny Car Champion based upon his wins in all racing.
If you watch some of these people, Danny Ongais in particular runs a car, and it looks as though the car is out of control for 1,320 feet, but he runs that thing faster than anybody else has been able to run a funny car this year.
During 1969, the quickest funny car in the business is driven by Danny Ongais. His Mustang is built and maintained by the legendary Mickey Thompson. The heart of this torpedo is a Ford 427 cubic inch single overhead cam V8. Supercharged and burning nitromethane fuel, the engine develops 1,500 horsepower. Ongais' funny car record is 6.96 seconds and 207 miles an hour for the quarter mile.
You figure that the normal reaction time for a person is about 1/1500ths of a second. It takes about another 1/10 of a second to get the tires all wound up and the drive shaft all wound up and everything. So you're working with 2,500ths of a second. And if you can split the difference between a light going on and off, it takes a half a second for the light to go on and off, and it takes you 2,500ths of a second to get moving. It's all something that's laid out before you, and you leave when the light's halfway off. I don't think there's anything magic, but it's really anticipation. Time comes to lead. You leave.
When the time came for Danny Ongais to leave, he left. And he left in time to take the AHRA Spring Nationals funny car title with him.
Years later, Thompson reflected on that success, saying, "We set a record that will never be broken. We entered 172 races in the funny car category and won 164 of them. There were 12 national championship events, and we won 11. We would have taken them all, but I left a fuel injector line loose. It was my fault we didn't win that 12th one, but Danny never told a soul.
Danny Ongais, driving a machine that resembles a Mustang sports coupe, will face Rich Soroyan at the wheel of a sparkling red Barracuda-bodied creation.
Soroyan has red-lighted. Rich Soroyan red-light. The winner is Danny Ongais.
The winner, who drives a car belonging to retired racing champion Mickey Thompson, takes the championship, while his time for the quarter mile is slower, 7.47 seconds. Drag racing demands great speed, but punishes the overeager who violate its fail-safe electronic starting system. Today, Danny Ongais observed rules and won, ironically by being slower.
Meanwhile, Danny's reputation as the silent Hawaiian was beginning to grow. With funny cars, the entire body lifts off the chassis so a driver can get in and out. The Mickey Thompson crew realized they had to leave the body down after racers and trap Danny inside the car, or he'd leave before pictures were taken and trophies were handed out.
Stand by for the start at Indianapolis. This is it. Mario Andretti instantly diving for that corner, and he's got Foyt in the first turn. Andretti has taken the lead.
On Memorial Day, Ongais was back at the Indy 500 like he was 2 years earlier, serving on Joe Leonard's pit crew and handing water to the driver on pit stops.
It'll be Prudhomme against Danny Ongais, the pair of California. Prudhomme in the near lane, Danny Ongais in the far lane, and they are ready. Incredible blast of power as Don Prudhomme defeats Danny Ongais, the kind of action that is marking the 16th annual National Hot Rod Association, staging one of the most explosive, one of the most record-setting events in the history of drag racing.
At the start of the 70s, Ongais continued his reputation as one of the country's top drag racers. In many events, he would drive both top fuel dragsters and funny cars. The Flying Hawaiian was part of a group of legends like Big Daddy Don Garlitz and Don the Snake Prudhomme, who took drag racing to greater heights. In a 2022 interview, Prudhomme said about Ongais, "I never want to say anyone is better than me, but I'll tell you, if anybody was better than me, it was him. He was that talented." In 1971, Danny again tried IndyCar racing, this time hired to drive for Carroll Shelby at the Triple Crown of 500-mile races. In practice at Phoenix, Ongais crashed and was unable to start. Once again, USAC turned down his entry at Indy for lack of experience. In June 1971, he and Mickey Thompson competed in the Baja 500 off-road race in Mexico. Racing a Chevy pickup truck at 130 miles per hour, a kid threw a rock at the windshield, which shattered and badly cut the faces of both men. While the bleeding Ongais insisted they continue, they withdrew from the race. In 1972, Ongais went to drive a Plymouth Barracuda funny car for John Mazmanian. A year later, the team was bought by the IndyCar team of Vels Parnelli Racing, co-owned by Parnelli Jones. As his drag racing cars were prepared in the same shop as the Indy cars of Mario Andretti and Al Unser, Danny saw another road back to Indianapolis. The team gave him partial sponsorship to run regional SCCA races. He won in his first race, a Formula A race at Laguna Seca in June 1974. In all, Ongais won 12 of his 15 starts, but Danny's time at the team came to an end in mid-1974 when Firestone pulled out of auto racing. As Firestone was a major sponsor of Vels Parnelli Racing, Ongais lost his path forward. But Danny's career had its biggest break when he met Ted Field around that time. Field was a 21-year-old whose family owned the Marshall Field department stores in the Midwest. In many ways, Ted and Danny were very similar, quiet, and loved racing. The relationship was described as Danny being an artist and Field being his patron, funding his career for the excitement of seeing great things happen. Field hired Ongais to run in Formula 5000 in his Interscope racing team. As IndyCar didn't run on road courses in the mid-70s, this was America's top open-wheel road racing series. It was co-sanctioned by USAC and SCCA and attracted heavy participation from IndyCar drivers and teams. Those first few years, Ongais carried the reputation of the drag racer trying something new, but results did come. In 2 years, Danny's best finish in the series was a pair of second-place finishes at Pocono and Road America.
It was Interscope Racing, and everybody thought Interscope was a product, and it was actually a name that Ted Field had made up. But it was an interesting relationship between Ted Field, who was young but looked older because he wore like a mountain man's beard, and he was very wealthy because his family was the Marshall Field family from Chicago. But Ted Field was sort of the Ongais backer, but he also drove himself.
Yeah, he and Ted Field are two of a kind in a way. Very, very private individuals. They keep to themselves. They're reluctant to give interviews. They don't come here to do anything except race cars, and they aren't trying to show off, and they aren't trying to impress you with anything else other than their skill behind the wheel. And that, I think, is not only an admirable trait, but a unique trait in this business.
Now, finally, with open-wheel success, Ongais returned for the third time to IndyCar. With Interscope backing, Parnelli Jones entered Danny in the 1976 California 500 at Ontario. Making his IndyCar debut alongside fellow rookie Rick Mears, Ongais qualified 11th and moved up quickly. Within the first 50 laps, Danny made an impressive climb to 5th. But on lap 54, a broken half shaft sent his car into the wall, flipping into the air and sliding upside down. The roll bar broke. Danny's helmet slid along the track, grinding away the shell and leaving just a thin layer of padding between his head and the asphalt. Nevertheless, Ongais walked away from the wreck unhurt. Now Ongais was full-time in IndyCar. Interscope was listed as the owner, but the cars were owned and prepared by the Parnelli Jones team. Danny became good friends with teammate Al Unser. The first part of the season was frustrating, with only 2 finishes in the first 7 races. The turning point came at Michigan in July. Early in the race, Ongais spun, exiting turn 4, but a caution flag kept him on the lead lap. He picked his way through the field and took the lead late. With a 1-lap run to the finish, Ongais held off Gordon Johncock and Johnny Rutherford to get his first win in only his 9th career race. The win opened the floodgates. Danny was the fastest qualifier the next 4 races. Despite the speed, he only finished 4 of the 13 races in 1977 and ranked 12th in points. The DNFs were due to 6 mechanical failures and 3 crashes. Despite this, Danny was voted USAC's Rookie of the Year. Ongais also made his debut in Formula One that year. Interscope bought a year-old Penske chassis and entered Danny at Watkins Glen. After starting last on the grid, Ongais climbed through the field in heavy rain and was running 10th when he crashed on lap 6. At Mosport a week later, Ongais finished 7th. With Interscope backing, Danny entered 1978 with a deal to drive the first 2 F1 races for the Ensign team. Ted Field once told a story about flying with Danny from California to England to fit his seat in the cockpit of the car. When he got to the factory, he sat in the cockpit, said "perfect," and got out of the car and went back to the airport. Field believed he said 5 words the entire round trip. Disappointing results of 21st at Argentina and 19th in Brazil were all Danny drove for the team before the IndyCar season started. He returned to F1 driving an Interscope entered car at Long Beach in the Netherlands, but failed to qualify for both races. But 1978 was a year where Ongais became an IndyCar superstar and rewrote the record books in a turbulent year.
Here's for that checkered flag. This is the last lap. Danny Ongais can smell victory. He's going down that straightaway checkered flag. Danny Ongais has won the Ontario 200 with Tom Sneva finishing second, Al Unser third.
In Ontario, California, Danny Ongais won the California 200.
Ongais followed up his win in Ontario with a win at Texas World Speedway. He entered Indianapolis as the point leader.
Several days ago, May 16th, Danny Ongais tested his backup car. It was a shattering experience for Danny Ongais and his friend Parnelli Jones, and a reminder that a split second is enough time to destroy a $100,000 car. Because of built-in safety and on-the-spot emergency crews, Danny was okay, and now goes out to qualify in his other races.
There it is, 44 and 90, 100 seconds, 200.401. Still over the 200-mile-an-hour mark, Danny Ongais.
Waving the white flag, 1 lap to go, 2.5 miles, still confront Danny Ongais. Follows the same groove through the number 1 turn. Up into the short straightaway, brushes the wall with his rear right tire as he goes through that short chute, but hangs on to the car and is now down the back straightaway with half a lap to go.
Let's bring this remarkable young man to the checkered flag.
He's through the number 4 turn, using all the racetrack as he comes off corner 4 and heads down the front straightaway. The checkered flag is out for Danny Ongais.
You're second quick, they're telling him.
Well, it's very good. I think if that holds out or we manage to stay somewhere close to the front, it's good for a good starting position.
What about the 4th lap, Danny? We dropped down quite a bit, almost 5 miles an hour in between from the 1st to the 4th.
Well, it changes a little bit out there, and I decided to see if I could make all 4 and take what we could get.
It's the 1978 Indianapolis 500.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engine.
A sentimental moment at Indianapolis. Mrs. Mary Holman, and there is the man on the pole, Tom Sneva. This is the time when 32 men and a woman are looked at by hundreds of thousands on the scene and many millions more watching on television. Nonetheless, they're all alone, like these men on the front row. Starter Pat Badan still does not have the green flag out. Here they come to the starting line, and the green flag is out. They're racing at Indianapolis. And it's Danny Ongais quickly taking the lead from Tom Sneva.
It's Danny Ongais, who's famous for his effort at the beginning of a race in car number 25, the black car. There you see him. Got quite a jump on the rest of the field. It wasn't the tidiest race start that I've ever seen in Indianapolis, but Ongais certainly didn't take a second look.
He certainly didn't. The 36-year-old Danny Ongais, remember, in only his second Indianapolis 500, sitting on the middle of the first row, grabbed the lead.
I wonder if he sees Tom Sneva behind him there as he goes in. And he doesn't see Tom Sneva because he really shut the door on Tom Sneva going through there.
All right, Sneva being slowed down there, and Ongais moving up right behind him. Ongais moving down, trying to retake the lead from Tom Sneva, and he's done it. That's Danny Ongais style racing. We've seen him do that time and again.
Tremendously tough, charged racing driver. He really is amazing. What an amazing young man he is. He's very quiet. He hardly says a word, but my goodness, does he drive.
Extremely close, dangerous, but masterful racing right now between two of the top race drivers in the world, Danny Ongais and Tom Sneva. Sneva, the pride of the great Northwest. Ongais, born in Hawaii, more recently living in Costa Mesa, California. Oh, look at this. Ongais down low.
And he really is charging by. He's got it. He's taking it from Tom Sneva.
race leader, Al Unser, in traffic at the moment in the Indianapolis 500. And his lead, which he had started to spread a little bit on Danny Ongais, is being cut down by that very fact. Having a little trouble moving past those cars. But you know Ongais is closing that gap. He's beginning to move on in on him. It's about 5.3 seconds right now. Look at Ongais still moving up. There, going out of the picture was Unser. There, the black car, Ongais. There was Al Unser going by, and there's Ongais still closing in on him. We're going to have some sensational racing here in just about a minute, it looks like.
Remember, of course, that Al Unser's radio is working. Danny Ongais' radio is not working, so if he needs anything in the pits, he has to converse. He's got to shout at his pit crew or try to give hand signals. No easy matter, and here they come.
Here they come, in together. Al Unser in front. Danny Ongais right behind him. Unser will have to stop first, so Ongais will have to get around him. And it looks like Al might be blocking him out a little bit, but now he's got to pull in. Ongais flashing by.
No tire change for either car so far. They're both sitting in there waiting for the fuel to go in very patiently. Look at this. Al Unser's pulled away with files in hand. He's now passing the still parked car of Danny Ongais. His car being pushed away, and Ongais has certainly lost ground on Al Unser. And he gets through there, Dick Simon in the red and the black car behind him.
And Janet Guthrie just behind Simon. Janet Guthrie, however, still running very well. It's Danny Ongais, smoke coming from the engine. All of a sudden, the second place car probably has had it. You see that?
What a disappointment. When that much smoke comes out the back of a race car, Jim, it looks like it might be the end of the day. Danny Ongais, who has driven so well, the car handles so well, everyone doing the right job. Danny Ongais, the such quiet and dignified man from Hawaii, obviously got an enormous amount of disappointment there. Look at the smoke coming out. Danny's unbuckling his visor there. He's unbuckling his seatbelt, and I think he's going to get out the car, Jim.
He cut it. It's all over. Killed the engine. And the engine is already dead. But the applause in the pit area is for this man, Danny Ongais, out of the race. A very sportsmanlike fellow under any circumstances. There's Parnelli Jones with him. Danny does not brag in victory. He doesn't moan in defeat.
Oh, Danny, a superb drive. Great drive. You must be very disappointed.
Well, the idea that we've fallen out hasn't set in yet, but that's how it goes, I guess.
Did you enjoy that race with Al Unser?
Well, it was going to begin to tighten up toward the end. It was very nice.
Okay, what went wrong with the car?
I have no idea.
What were you going to catch, Al?
I think we could have.
Okay, hey, Danny, it was a great drive. Thanks a lot for a great show. Ongais out of the race after a superb performance.
By this point, Ongais fostered a difficult relationship with the media, who didn't know how to react to his short answers. Some media members even said it was better that Ongais didn't win. IndyCar competed at Mosport in June, and perhaps there was no greater display of Ongais' speed and drive than this moment. Al Unser posted the fastest qualifying time at 75.2 seconds. Then Ongais ran a blistering lap to take the pole at 72.5. The overall track record was 71.3, set in 1977 during Formula One qualifying. Despite being nearly 3 seconds faster than the second-place car, Ongais' team made adjustments and sent him back out with minutes left in the session to chase the track record. Going too fast over a bump, he lost it and crashed the car. The crew worked overnight on repairs, and Danny still won the race by 41 seconds. In July, Ted Field bought the team from Parnelli Jones.
As we've seen already on the pole is Danny Ongais for the 6th time out of those 12 races this year, and for his 4th new qualifying record at a shattering hair under 135 miles an hour around his 1 mile oval.
Danny Ongais coming to turn number 4. The race has been lengthened by caution. No records here. Danny Ongais wins his 4th United States Auto Club Championship bout.
Beautiful weather here in Michigan. I think the story for us is going to see what Danny Ongais does. Danny had trouble. His car didn't come here for qualifying or practice yesterday. He's right at the very back of the grid. And in fact, this morning, he blew an engine this morning. So he really doesn't know how the car's behaving around these 18-degree banked ovals.
In the final row, number 58 is Eldon Rasmus, and then next to him, number 25, Danny Ongais, whom you would expect to find up front. But remember, he had trouble. His car wasn't here yesterday ready to qualify. Blew an engine this morning. He'll start at the back, but you can expect him to stand on it, and the green flag is out, and they're racing. It's Johnny Rutherford taking the lead from Sneva. On the inside of the second row, A.J. Foyt trying to solidify third place behind them, and so he does. Here, though, is the man of the hour, the young man from Hawaii who started in last place in the race because his car was not here to qualify, and apparently is going to be the winner. They've got the checker flag out, waiting for Danny Ongais. A.J. Foyt continued to spew smoke as he's on the race course. Ongais has won the race as the checkered flag was given to him.
In 1978 alone, Ongais won 5 races and led 870 laps, breaking the record for most laps led in a single season. He started 17 races and led laps in every one. But what should have been a runaway championship was instead ended by many mechanical failures. Danny only finished 7 races that year and was leading when he fell out of the races at Milwaukee, Pocono, Atlanta, Trenton, Silverstone, and Brands Hatch.
And the leader, Danny Ongais, has broken down. He is pulled off just beyond the pits.
Look at the crowd applauding Danny Ongais there. A sporting British crowd appreciating that this man who wants to make it as a Grand Prix driver showed he had it as a USAC driver. His race ended, but certainly he's been the man of the day in this, the first ever USAC race at Brands Hatch.
Danny Ongais, 7th time on the pole, 5 races already won, nearly 800 laps led, out to prove that maybe the point scoring system in USAC just needs a little bit of modifying.
Despite leading the series in wins and poles that year, Danny only finished 8th in points. Tom Sneva won the championship without winning a race. While the championship eluded him, 1978 made him a superstar. At the end of the year, IndyCar racing split in 2, with the team owners leaving USAC and forming CART. Over the offseason, Interscope picked up sponsorship from Panasonic. Ongais again planned a part-time schedule with Formula One, driving for the Shadow team with Interscope support. Italian rookie Elio De Angelis would drive the car when Danny had IndyCar commitments. But between an off-season elbow injury, concerns over the car's speed and testing, and an F1 rule change to discourage part-time drivers, Ongais never drove another race in Formula One. Instead, at the 24 Hours at Daytona, he shared a Porsche 935 with Ted Field and Hurley Haywood. The team dominated the race, but broke a turbocharger with 11 minutes left. Ongais parked 500 feet from the finish line and sat there for the next 11 minutes until time expired and he drove across the finish. Despite this, they won by 49 laps, what remains the largest margin of victory in event history. Ongais entered Indianapolis in 1979 as one of the hottest drivers in the world. A record-breaking 78 season, a win in the 24 Hours of Daytona. Out to avenge his disappointment of a year before, Ongais again was one of the fastest in practice. Rule changes had slowed cars from their 200-mile-per-hour speeds in 78. Now 190 was the mark to shoot for. In practice, Danny ran a lap at 193 miles per hour, joining Rick Mears, Al Unser, and A.J. Foyt above the 193 mark. Whole day qualifying was washed out by rain. Late in the afternoon, the track dried and opened for practice. Ongais was knocked unconscious, and it took rescue workers over 20 minutes to extract him from the wreck. After waking up, he complained of neck pain and was hospitalized overnight, but released the following morning. In the days that followed, track doctors wouldn't approve Ongais to drive. He said he felt fine and was angry at the bureaucracy that wouldn't allow him to compete. Finally, on the last day of qualifying, he was approved to drive and put his car in the field, starting 27th in the race. But the fight to qualify was only the beginning. An unexpected hurdle threatened to put Ongais in jail.
A judge in Indianapolis today issued arrest warrants for race car drivers, or that is, race car drivers, A.J. Foyt and Danny Ongais. The warrants are just the latest in a series of legal controversies surrounding the race. We have more from Richard May.
Car owner Wayne Woodward had his car disqualified for rules violations in qualifying and filed a lawsuit against USAC seeking to be reinstated in the race. As part of this suit, all the drivers in the race were listed as co-defendants and ordered to appear in court. Foyt and Ongais refused being served a court summons, with Foyt allegedly slapping the summons out of a deputy's hands, and Ongais allegedly riding his bicycle at a deputy, who was then knocked to the ground and suffered a cut leg.
Tempers flared as the nagging legal problems continued. Sheriff's deputies trying to serve subpoenas met angry resistance from driver Danny Ongais, who, like others, could find no relief from the legal hassles.
Well, really, I'd just like to have to worry about what the race car is going to do, not what everybody else is going to do or what's going to happen in court and how many times you have to go to court and all this. That's something different.
By Sunday night, there will be a new champion here at Indy. That's the good news. The bad news is that the bickering and the bitterness which characterized this year's race will be unresolved. Richard Make, ABC News, Indianapolis.
After appearing in court and explaining that his attorney was told he didn't need to appear at the summons, the contempt of court charge was dropped. For all his troubles, Ongais was awarded the Jim Malloy Memorial Award at the drivers' meeting for a determined effort.
Sunday, May 27, 1979. We're at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then there's Danny Ongais, one of the fastest men in racing, who crashed in practice, finally had to qualify on the third day. For that reason, he'll be starting way back on the outside of the 9th row in car number 25. He'll be in heavy traffic at the start. Danny Ongais. That is the signal that we should have a start. Number 23, McElreath, is back on the track again. They're racing at Indianapolis. Going side by side into the first turn. On the outside, Al Unser started to make a move but didn't. On the inside, it's Tom Steve, but Unser ducks down and takes the lead. The man who won the race last year is in first place just that quickly.
Within 20 laps, Ongais had climbed from 27th to inside the top 10.
In now comes Danny Ongais. Remember, he crashed on the first day, was supposed to be the first day of qualifying in practice, so he had to qualify later on, started way back in the 9th row, but he's really been moving up.
Certainly has. This is a question of a man who really charges. He always charges. He's one of the fastest drivers in racing today. A 13.1 second stop with only fuel.
Again, that head-on shot. That's a beautiful shot. Danny Ongais tucked in behind there, behind Bobby. Woof.
Oh, it looked like he almost got hit there. He really had to move out of his groove very quickly. You've got to remember that these racing cars are very sensitive, and if you have to move very abruptly at the sort of speeds involved here, suddenly that car can go into the wildest spin you've ever seen. Danny Ongais right there had to be very, very sensitive with the way he worked that steering wheel to get the car away from the car that he almost collided with.
It's Bobby Unser in the lead, and now it's youth against age, because it's Bobby Unser, age 45, against his teammate Rick Mears in second place, age 27. A.J. Foyt is in fourth place. Danny Ongais has now moved up to fifth.
So Danny Ongais, although he's fourth, is just unlapping himself from the second man here, but of course he's still got to get up to pass Al Unser.
He hit the wall. Ongais.
Danny Ongais slammed into the wall, coming out of turn 4 there. I don't know, there may be something wrong with that car now because there was flame. He hit the wall solidly.
What a fantastic control job, though, to control that car coming off the wall.
And look at this, he's passing another car. Danny Ongais is plugged in, and look at the slow motion here. Danny Ongais high in turn 4. It could be turbulence from the car in front, but he hit the wall solidly. Quickly got the car back under control again, and then got himself aimed down this front stretch again.
But here comes the checkered flag awaiting young Rick Mears at age 27. He has won the Indianapolis 500 for 1979.
And there, of course, is Danny Ongais. He finished third. What a great move he did all the way through the field from so far back.
Passed Bobby Unser, in fact, after the green flag came out on the last couple of laps. Well, here's how they finished. Rick Mears, the winner unofficially. A.J. Foyt, second. Danny Ongais, third. Bobby Unser, who led much of the way, fourth.
In June, Ongais was again at the center of controversy just by entering a race. As part of the USAC and CART war, CART banned their drivers from running any USAC races other than the Indy 500, including the prestigious Pocono 500. Ongais entered Pocono due to Panasonic's insistence.
In the Music 500 at Pocono, a green flag pit stop has given the lead to the flying Hawaiian, Danny Ongais. Ongais is pulling away from A.J. Foyt, and it stands at 15 seconds.
One car is slowing down, heading up to turn number 2.
Danny Ongais is coasting by this position here now, and Foyt has just passed him. Ongais is coasting.
As Ongais exited the turn this current lap, the car sounded as though it was missing. It sputtered rather noticeably, a giant pop, and then Ongais turned it down and it coasted the rest of the way.
Danny qualified second and was leading with 50 laps to go when he blew an engine, giving the win to A.J. Foyt. CART fined Ongais $5,000 for racing at Pocono. 1979 was a year where ground effects took over IndyCar racing, and Danny's Parnelli chassis couldn't compete with the new Penske PC7 chassis. He led 33 laps in the CART season opener at Phoenix and never led again that year. He ended the season 6th in points. At a press conference on December 11, 1979, at New York's Tavern on the Green restaurant in Central Park, Danny Ongais and Interscope made a massive announcement. Using their connections from sports car racing, they convinced Porsche to enter IndyCar. The turbocharged flat-six engine was the same one that had won 3 of the last 4 24 Hours of Le Mans and the 1979 24 Hours of Daytona. Interscope would be the only team with Porsche engines. It would compete in USAC as opposed to CART. This also meant Ongais and Porsche would compete at Talladega, Road Atlanta, and Charlotte among USAC's unique 1980 schedule. While they would start the season with their old Parnelli chassis, Interscope designed a new ground effects car that would debut at the Indy 500. Porsche planned to make the program a major part of their marketing in the United States. Amid the USAC and CART war, the Indy 500 was changed into an invitation-only event, possibly meant to exclude CART teams. Part of the requirement to get an invite was the team had to have run at Indianapolis, Pocono, and Ontario in 1979. This meant for a brief moment that Ongais was the only driver eligible to enter the 1980 Indy 500. While invitations were eventually sent out to CART teams, there was a brief period over the winter when it appeared CART teams might not be invited, and Ongais would be the favorite, competing against a group of smaller USAC teams. This signaled the end of a wild decade for Ongais, who started the 70s as one of the best drag racers and ended it as one of the best in IndyCar. But dark clouds were on the horizon that derailed the promise of success. Over the winter, the 6-cylinder Porsche had been tested for 4 months using 54 inches of turbo boost, right in the middle of the 60 inches of boost that the 4-cylinder engines got and the 48 inches that the 8-cylinders ran. The car was tested at Ontario, and speeds were unclear. Some reports say that they reached speeds of 199 miles per hour, over 7 miles per hour faster than what eventually won the pole at Indy in May. Other reports said it was much slower. But less than 3 months before the Indy 500, USAC told Porsche they would have to race with only 48 inches of turbo boost, the same as the 8-cylinder Cosworth engine. Porsche was outraged and felt this would leave them uncompetitive. After months of hype, Porsche withdrew from IndyCar racing before ever competing. USAC, on the other hand, suspected they were unprepared, or using the turbo dispute as an excuse to pull out, and the possibility always existed to give extra boost if they looked slow in practice. Some even said that A.J. Foyt protested USAC to reduce the Porsche's boost. Despite the disappointment, Ongais finished 7th in the Indy 500 after returning to the Cosworth engine and their old chassis.
As the checker flag is given to Johnny Rutherford of Fort Worth, Texas. He has won his 3rd Indianapolis 500. And here comes Sneva, Tom Sneva in the back there in the yellow car. Oh, it's Ongais hit the wall, but the battle for 3rd is coming to the finish line.
In 7 additional races in 1980, the Interscope team finished only 1 race, while mechanical problems continued to plague them. Meanwhile, Ongais and Field raced almost the entire IMSA season and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The 1980 chassis built for the Porsche program was redesigned to fit a Cosworth engine and finally made its debut in 1981. Because of its black paint, it quickly became known as the Batmobile. With very fast speeds in testing and the 4th fastest speed in practice before qualifying, this could finally be the year Ongais won Indianapolis. On pole day, heartbreak struck when it was his turn to qualify. The starter rod broke, leaving the team unable to start the car and unaware that rules would have allowed them to push start it, so they had to wait until the next week to qualify. In practice on May 12th, Ongais became the first driver in 3 years to run a lap of over 200 miles per hour. Finally, when Danny did make a qualifying run on the second weekend, his average speed of 197 miles per hour made him the 3rd fastest qualifier, but he would start in 21st.
Sunday, May 24th, 1981. We're at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Indianapolis, Indiana. There are significant drivers further down the list. Tom Sneva, for example, turned in the fastest qualifying time of all. However, since it was not done on the official first qualifying day, he starts from the 7th row. He should move through the pack quickly in car number 2. So should Danny Ongais. This hot shoe Hawaiian is always competitive, but his best finish was 4th. He'll try to better that in Interscope Racing's number 25, Danny Ongais.
We wait for the command. This is one of the most exciting moments in all of sports.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
And they're racing in Indianapolis into the first turn. Bobby Unser. A.J. Foyt has dropped back a little bit.
We have been watching some of the other cars that started well back in the field.
Mario Andretti has come from 32nd to 14th. Danny Ongais also is making an advance, 21st to 12th.
Danny Ongais is in for a pit stop, changing right side rubber, refueling the car. This is the stop under the green for Danny Ongais. And Danny Ongais is back into competition. And we are back to racing once again at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Danny Ongais actually leads the pack across the line, but car number 3, Bobby Unser, has regained the lead by the official scoring charts at this moment.
Shortly after the race began, Ongais fell a lap down, pitting with a soft tire. With a fast car, they were able to get back on the lead lap.
After 50 laps, the leader was Tom Sneva in car number 2. In second place, car number 60, Gordon Smiley. Running in third, car number 6, Rick Mears. Running in fourth, car number 3, Bobby Unser. In the 5th spot, car number 25, Danny Ongais.
During green flag pit stops, Danny took the lead for 4 laps before making his stop.
So we are still running under the green flag, and as a result of all of this action, Danny Ongais has picked up the lead and is leading this 500-mile race with 60 laps complete.
All right, into the pits now comes car number 25. That's Danny Ongais. He's got flame coming out of that, Jackie.
We seem to see nothing but flame, but that looks like exhaust flame that's coming out of the engine itself. The engine keeps running while they're in a pit stop such as this, but if there were any spillage of fuel here, and they're having trouble getting that fuel line on, it seems that he's a long way away. Look at that flame again, really licking out the back of this extended bodywork for benefiting aerodynamic running. You can see that flame very, very strong indeed. Now, if someone were to fill some or spill some fuel over that at this time, quite frankly, it would be an awful mess. Danny Ongais already having stopped an extended stop over 34 seconds.
He seems to be stalled.
He's stalled his engine too. They're all having trouble in here. I've never seen so many stalled engines, whether it's a driver problem or whether it's the humidity and heat today, I really don't know, but they're all having trouble.
Well, and it's been the top drivers too, the experienced men to whom it's been happening, not the rookies.
Now, the engine revs, and once again they push him off the line. Danny Ongais moves out and is on his way.
And leaving 2 black streaks as he goes, Lou.
He went screaming out of the pits, and I think that there was a theory that he may have broken a half shaft or something going out of the pits. Yeah, just one of those as he was going out. So I don't know if he stressed something, but they did think that maybe there was something.
Ongais recalled that he stayed optimistic they could recover from the stall as he returned to the track. Unfortunately, he wouldn't complete a lap. I had thought of having to do the same thing all over again, knowing I'd be a lap out of it. Having done it once, I thought we'd do it again, and then the thing turned right. Very hard.
Oh my God, the terrible crash! I think it's Danny Ongais. I think it's Ongais, Jackie.
And the driver's in the car, Jim. He's still in the car. I can see he's sitting upright. In fact, his feet are outside the car. The car is on fire. Luckily, the flame, I think, is going back the way. The car is terribly damaged, Jim. The emergency crews, as ever, on top of the car very quickly, putting the fire out. Danny Ongais doesn't seem to be moving very much, Jim.
It was thought the aggressive way he pulled out of the pits may have damaged a half shaft that broke when he got to turn 3. In a 2022 interview, AJ Foyt agreed with this, saying, quote, "The cars were fragile on the half shafts, and he liked to drive them hard sometimes. That is the reason why he got into the wall so often."
I've never seen a race car deform as this one has. Can you imagine a race driver is in that car right now? Let us only hope that the good Lord is looking down upon him with good fortune. Unfortunately, very obvious in that is Danny Ongais himself. His head was moving around at that point, but I'm sure he's unconscious by now. His leg, unfortunately, looks as if it's been rather badly broken. The flame there you see is certainly an oil fire. Danny Ongais, a great driver, tough man, and he's now out of the car, which is wonderful news in its own way.
Danny Ongais, Hawaiian-born, celebrated his 39th birthday 3 days ago, driving for the Interscope Racing team.
As he was loaded into the ambulance, it was said that someone in the press box was heard sarcastically saying it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Well, Danny Ongais has been put back in the ambulance, and there you see it going out on 16th Street, headed for Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis.
With me is Dr. Terry Trammell. Doctor, the first question is his life in danger?
No, it's not. He's doing very well. He's awake, alert. Is able to respond to commands now and is in no danger for his life. His most serious injury is a very severely comminuted, meaning many pieces, fracture of his tibia bone, the bone between the knee and the ankle. That came through the skin. Actually, a piece of bone came right out through the suit that he was wearing and damaged an artery that goes from his knee to his foot. Both bones in his forearm are broken, and those were fixed with 2 steel pins that are inside the bone. They did not come through the skin, and he should have use of his hand within the next 48 hours or so. His chest and abdomen appear to be without any injury.
In his book, trackside Dr. Stephen Olvey said the piece of bone that went through Danny's fire suit was found in the dirt outside the track the next day. Ongais' right leg was about an inch shorter than his left after reconstruction. Recovery took several months, but there was never any doubt he would return. For the next few years, Ongais raced with a leg brace to protect his injured right leg. Then he returned to driving at the 24 Hours of Daytona. He made his IndyCar return at Atlanta in April 1982. A mechanical failure caused him to crash in practice, and the team had no backup car, forcing them to withdraw. He would go to Indianapolis to face the memories of his crash.
You know what I really can't stand? All those press guys trying to psychoanalyze me. I don't like that kind of prying.
On May 15th, Danny's comeback was completed when he qualified for the Indianapolis 500 at a speed of 199 miles per hour. Tragically, just 3 cars after his run, Gordon Smiley lost his life in a crash reminiscent of Ongais' 1 year earlier. While most assumed that Ongais might have feared a return, it seemed that the worst part of the stoic Hawaiian's comeback was denying he was mentally affected in any way. I can't say that is a special feeling because there was never any doubt in my mind or with any of the people around me that we would be back, he said. I don't think anything has changed, not that I can think of. I probably don't have an answer for that because I never had to give it any thought. I mean, you just live.
Danny Ongais is back, remarkably so, after his terrifying crash in last year's race. It's still not out. They appear to be in pretty good order in the first 5 or 6 rows at any rate. A little bit ragged towards the back. And look out, a crash before the start of the race. It was Kevin Kogan from the middle of the first row, suddenly taking a hard left turn. Tires flying. How in the world could this have happened? Danny Ongais beginning to move, coming up into 5th place. He who was involved in the very bad crash last year. Tremendous traction. Oh, that's Danny Ongais. Another crash for Ongais.
Oh, no.
It's not as bad as last year, nowhere near. And Danny moving in the car. There does not appear to be any fire. Jerry Sneva there involved, the brother of Tom, who's been leading the race.
Of course, the rash of pit stops under the yellow. Poor Ongais, Jim. 2nd year in a row on an accident. Of course, this time he's not hurt, which is wonderful.
As Danny continued to recover, Interscope ended their IndyCar program for the year. They continued to run full-time in IMSA and switched from Porsche to Lola. Ongais and Field co-drove to 3 IMSA wins that year at Daytona on the 4th of July, Pocono in September, and Daytona in November.
Checkered flag is out. There it is. The checkered flag, the winner, Danny Ongais, Ted Field. Marvelous come from behind victory, a surprising victory, a great victory. Ted, congratulations. Good race.
Thank you very much. The crew was spectacular. The engine builder, Ryan Falconer, is our greatest asset, and Danny Ongais is unbelievable.
In September, Danny's 21-year-old son Brian survived a helicopter crash in Southern California. As a pilot, he was practicing landings when a gust of wind turned the helicopter sideways and into the ground. He was treated for minor injuries.
In 1979, this was the team that did it all. Ted Field and Danny Ongais, then of course Ongais in a horrendous crash at Indianapolis. But he came back and he won his first race here at Daytona. Field and Ongais, real favorites to win this 24-hour jaunt.
Ted Field and Interscope cut their racing involvement after the 24 Hours of Daytona. While Interscope was just a random name he created for his race team, Field quickly made it one of the biggest names in Hollywood, beginning by producing 1984's hit movie Revenge of the Nerds. Further blockbusters produced by Interscope included 3 Men and a Baby, Cocktail, and the Jumanji film series. Field also formed Interscope Records in 1990, which launched the careers of musicians such as Tupac, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Eminem. The race team that started it all, Interscope Racing, returned at Indy that year to limited success. Ongais started and finished 21st, dropping out with handling problems around halfway. After Indy, Danny went to drive for Patrick Racing, which needed a replacement for Johnny Rutherford, who suffered a broken foot and ankle. In 7 races, his best finish was 5th at Mid-Ohio.
Well, Danny certainly has had a good day, and it's got to be a good feeling for him. He had that horrendous crash at Indianapolis Motor Speedway a couple of years ago, and really he's kind of been on the comeback trail since then. This is the first time in a long time that Danny has become, again, a regular and had a chance to really sit behind the wheel of an Indianapolis car and really do some racing.
But the season was a wake-up call that his broken leg would hold him back if he didn't make changes. The March chassis was tight on his legs, especially his right one, which had been in a brace since the crash. That made it hard with right foot braking to move his foot back and forth between the pedals. Still, Danny's crew felt they could overcome his limitations by making simple adjustments to the car. In an interview, his crew chief said, quote, "Danny wasn't as quick on road courses because the car wasn't fitted to him. He had trouble operating the pedals, and his legs were a little bit down on strength. But if we get this car right for him, he'll win some races." 1984 was a comeback year for Ongais. During the offseason, he lost over 50 pounds. Interscope even recommitted to IndyCar racing and would attempt most of the races.
Danny Ongais is battling for 9th place. On the inside is Chris Neifel. Ongais on the high side. He moves his way past Neifel and picks up 9th. Directly in front of him now is Kevin Kogan. Now Ongais coming up alongside Kevin Kogan, moves past and picks up 8th place. Ongais started 18th. And look at this, car number 25, Danny Ongais started 18th. He is now running in 5th.
Boy, it's good to see another familiar face up front there. Danny's been trying so hard for the last few years. Now it's starting to come right for him.
Those are the veterans that have moved up. Here's one of the rookies, Mike Andretti, in 3rd place. Danny Ongais is right behind him, but Andretti has managed to hang on and is currently running 3rd.
Yeah, but there's the old hand Ongais. He's hanging right in there. Look at him, pushing all the way. He won't let up. You know, one of the best races I ever had was with Danny Ongais, and we ran side by side for 20 laps one time at Michigan, and it was the most fun I've had in a long time.
Here in the closing laps of the Phoenix 150, Ongais still feels racy. And 5th place to Danny Ongais.
Danny, having fun in the sun down in Phoenix. That's got to feel great to come back and get a good, strong performance here.
Yeah, it's been a good many years since we'd been on a short track, and though we weren't real competitive, we were able to run to the finish and get some good results for the crew and myself. And I think perhaps if we get a bit more polish as the season goes on, we'll hopefully join the front runners.
A lot of people remember the great 1978 year when you were really cleaning house. The month of May is right around the corner. It's got to be a big lift going to Indianapolis.
It is. Feel very good. We've put together some other things, and I'm sure they'll come out in the next few days. I'm looking forward to Indianapolis and hopefully the rest of the season.
Congratulations on a great drive. Thank you.
It's good to see Danny Ongais back after that tremendous crash a few years ago at Indianapolis. He's a racer.
Days after Phoenix, it was announced that Ongais' cars would be prepared by 7-time Indy 500 winning mechanic George Bignati.
Direct from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the 68th running of the Indianapolis 500. Now, stay tuned for the greatest spectacle in racing.
Row 4, Al Unser Sr., Danny Ongais, and A.J. Foyt. What a wonderful row that is.
The center of the 4th row, car number 25, Danny Ongais, the Interscope Racing March.
Motor Speedway, Mrs. Mary F. Allman.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
The green flag in the hands of the starter, Dwayne Sweeney. The green flag flies. They're racing. Rick Mears just in the lead. Tom Steva back into 2nd place to turn 1.
It's just as you call it. Rick Mears, Tom Steva, Michael Andretti, and then Howdy Holmes over in turn 2.
That's Danny Ongais setting up on Bobby. Ongais, who had that terrible crash a couple of years ago, back in action and driving as well or better than ever. We mentioned that he's taken off 40 pounds. He's much more physically fit, ready to stay the course than he used to be.
And he's leading the Indianapolis 500. Not bad.
Nothing wrong with that. Look at Ongais beginning to pull it out a little bit in his black number 25.
Yep. Tremendous comeback for Ongais. I mean, maybe there's something about racing that pushes our horizons further and further. They show us that things are possible that we didn't hitherto realize.
Well, now look here what we have. Bobby retaking the lead of Danny Ongais.
Car number 6, Rick Mears, was the leader. Car number 2, Al Unser Sr. was in 2nd. In 3rd spot, car number 21, Al Holbert. In 4th spot, car number 99, Michael Andretti. In 5th spot, car 25, Danny Ongais.
They're twin checkered flags waiting for Rick Mears of Bakersfield, California. He raises his hand in the air as he screams over the line. Rick Mears has won his 2nd Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Wastegate problems slowed Ongais at the finish, and he ended the race in 9th. After Indy, George Bignatti focused even more attention on Danny's team with the goal of making Ongais a winner again. "He's very fast," he said. "It would make me very happy to get him up where he belongs. He needs a shot in the arm. He's still great. I think he drives just as good as he ever did."
Today, Saturday, June 16th, the return of the International Race of Champions. Beside him in fourth position is the former 24-hour of Daytona champion, IndyCar and IMSA winner, California's Danny Ongais with car number 11. Here's Earnhardt out in front, and here comes Ongais, and it's a new-looking Danny Ongais. He has shed some 60 pounds, much lighter. Here he is, Danny Ongais, now out in front in the black, number 11.
The sweet air at first place, and look at that lead he's putting on them. This is remarkable.
And Neil Bonnet's making a strike for the first position. Bonnet going for first. Kaylee Arborough tucked in there in third as they swap him around out of turn number 2. Now here's Ongais closing outside. Ongais on the high side. Down at the bottom, Neil Bonnet throws a little bit of a block, and Ongais goes low.
That's the push that's built into these cars, you see. You just can't go that fast and keep the car in the line. Oh, Danny's putting a chop on Neil Bonnet. Oh, it's starting to get rough.
Danny Ongais back in first place.
Ongais needs a win, Ken, for his reputation. He's been crashing too often, really, in races. And a win here would give him a lot of confidence and reestablish him as a frontline driver.
Invitational race, and Ongais very much wanted to be in this. He had requested and asked to be in this event, and he wants to prove himself. And here he is, leading Neil Bonnet into the back straightaway. Ongais charging to be inside. Danny Ongais making a move as they come out of number 4, coming around to complete 31 laps. Quick move down the main straightaway. Crowd's on their feet. Boy, are they loving this. Ongais, low.
He scored the lead in that one, Ken.
Back in there again.
Trying to move up in front of Bonnet.
Way down low comes John Cock. And they touch, and Ongais is sliding. Picks it up. No, can't gather it back.
Hang in there.
Keeps it out of the wall. Caution is out, third time today. As they come down on a turn number 4 to the line. Round 1 of the International Race of Champions is Neil Bonnet. Parsons is second, John Cock third. And there's Danny Ongais' view of this race with our onboard camera. There's Derek Bell. They're looking back and forth at each other. Remember, Bell is third. Ongais is in fourth.
Danny Ongais, there he moves out. Look at this.
Danny Ongais moves through and takes Derek Bell, picks up a spot, and he gets in trouble and spins all the way around.
Full spin on the track, both from the end.
12th turn, got him.
I tell you, Danny, look at this. He's swiveling and swerving, getting back in, smoking the tires. You know, Danny Ongais has had so much bad luck. He has an insatiable appetite for the race, as we just saw.
Danny Ongais. No one has tried harder to win this series, and there goes Ongais on the high side, beginning to maneuver as he's using up all the land, and it's just a little bit of a touch there, and Ongais is in trouble, sliding down out of turn number 2. Picks it back up. He tried to move through, still sliding. Caution is out on the track. No matter where he goes, trouble seems to follow Danny Ongais. That's really sad. He tries so hard, and he is so determined. And back here at Michigan for the finale. Still Bonnet right there in second spot. But it's a whole new picture as Ongais stays in third. Drafting, Ongais in the slipstream. Drafting down the back straightaway, pulling up on the 2 leaders. They're wheel to wheel going into turn 3. Bottom of the racetrack, Bonnet has the advantage. Yarbrough trying to pull alongside in turn 3. Ongais right there with him. Side by side for third as well. Sneva pulls up on Ongais. Now there is the Sneva car, and there is Ongais. They're all together coming down for the checkered flag at the line. Bonnet comes across first, but that will not do it. Sneva will take third at the finish line.
Here's Danny Ongais. Ongais in car number 25, fighting with Al Unser Sr. It is a fight for 6th place. Ongais has never finished the Pocono 500. His best finish has been 12th place. He's doing much better than that here today. Big Al drops back in position. There is Ongais as he accelerates and heads through turn number 2.
The leader on the track is Danny Ongais in car number 25. However, Danny has not pitted and will be having to do so momentarily. Here is Danny Ongais, the leader, coming in, and he is coming in at a full head of steam. His pit is located down near turn number 1, so he moves onto the pit apron at quite fast speed. He gets the car stopped now, and we'll watch this pit stop. Mario Andretti is going to win this race. Tom Sneva is going to settle for a very disappointed second. Danny Ongais looks like will finish in 3rd spot.
Ongais finished 10th in points, despite missing 3 races. It was his best finish since 1980. I'm beginning to feel better physically, said Ongais. I don't remember what I felt like before the crash, but I know I don't feel the same. I wish I could tell you how. Some of the things I used to be comfortable doing are physical impossibilities now. I never thought about quitting. Keeping a positive mental outlook has not been difficult. I've been happy with my career, but in order to do well, you have to be there. I haven't been around. A good number of the races over the years I've had to sit out. Coming off a good season in 1984, there was hope for 85, but bad luck again derailed the year for Ongais. During practice at Long Beach, his stalled car was parked on the side of the track waiting for a tow truck when it was struck by Raoul Boisel, destroying it. Ongais returned at Indianapolis and qualified 17th. In Monday's practice, he spun in turn 1 and hit the wall with the nose of the car. Danny walked away with bruised knees, but an extra plate of reinforcement the crew installed to protect his leg was credited with preventing worse injuries. The car was repaired, and he finished 17th in the race after blowing an engine.
Some are saying backmarker Phil Kruger's placement behind the pace car may have caused the most spectacular crash of the day. As faster cars scrambled to get around Phil, Danny Ongais went side over side down the backstretch. From another angle, you can see Ongais' car flip several times before stopping near the entrance to turn 3.
In 6 races that year, Danny's best finish was 6th in the season finale at Miami. After over 10 years in racing, Interscope shut down at the end of 1985, leaving Ongais without a ride. In the 1986 Indy 500, there were 25 cars built by March in the field. The company themselves entered a factory-owned car at Indy and hired Danny to drive it. For the second year in a row, Ongais crashed in practice. With only light damage, the car was fixed, and he finished 23rd in the race, falling out with ignition troubles. Over the summer, he drove several European sports car races in a Porsche 962, including a second-place finish in Czechoslovakia.
Look, I do what I do because it's fun. I know it's not the most humanitarian thing I can be doing, but it's what I like. Race driving is more than a job. It's what I am.
In early 1987, it was announced that Ongais would drive for Team Penske in that year's Indianapolis 500. Sponsoring him was Panavision, a company owned by Interscope that made the best and most expensive cameras in the Hollywood film industry. It was said that Ted Field was putting up over $1 million for Danny to drive at Penske. It was Danny's best opportunity after his 1981 crash, even if it was an unlikely pairing. While he was always quiet with the media, by 87, Ongais was described as obsessively silent. While Team Penske drivers have always been well-spoken in the media, Danny refused to give any interviews once he arrived in Indianapolis, even after Roger Penske asked him to open up. He says he doesn't want to talk, Penske said. I'm amazed. His whole heart is in racing. That's his life. Racing. Despite his media's silence, Ongais was embraced by the team and tested throughout the spring. In the opening days of practice, the Penske team struggled for speed. The PC-16 chassis was slow, and there were thoughts of changing to a 1986 March. Over the first 5 days on track, Ongais posted only the 22nd fastest speed, the second of 3 Penske cars.
And they were running new cars, 87, and it was the first year for radial tires, and the 87 and the radial tire was not a particularly happy mix, but they had decided to try an 86, and Rick Mears came in and said, this handles better.
One of those who hit the wall head-on, Danny Ongais.
The right front wheel came back into the cockpit and struck Danny in the face, tearing the visor off his helmet. He was held overnight to the hospital with a concussion and released Friday morning. While he hoped to return, doctors confirmed days later they wouldn't allow him to race.
Carrying what is now the story of the day, and perhaps to a certain degree the story of the decade at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 47-year-old Al Unser Sr. was without a ride in this race until 2 weeks ago. He was given the car that Danny Ongais crashed, riding under the colors of Penske Racing. And now, Al Unser Sr. is in position to win a 4th Indianapolis 500 title, which would tie him with A.J. Foyt as the only 2 men ever to accomplish that.
Ongais was famously replaced by his old teammate, Al Unser, who took the backup car and won his 4th Indy 500. The win cemented Al Unser as a legend, but for Ongais, it was a lost opportunity for a veteran badly needing a boost to keep his career alive.
I still want to say Danny Sullivan, or Danny Ongais rather, I feel for him because this should be his ride. That's the way it goes.
To make it up to Danny, Team Penske entered him in the remaining Triple Crown 500-mile races at Michigan and Pocono.
And we have had an accident on the track. Someone has hit the wall. The yellow flag is out.
The car's obviously been pretty bad.
Possible Danny Ongais
yes.
on the left, I would say.
That would be Ed Pym. It looks like Ed Pym on the right. Looks like 25 on the left.
There's Ongais. He is all right. That is wonderful to see that Danny, who has had, of course, some of the most terrible accidents of any driver to survive bad accidents.
Attempting to pass Ed Pym on the outside, Ongais was hit in the left rear, and both cars hit the wall. The wrecked car forced the team to withdraw him from the Pocono 500. He returned at the season finale in Miami, but finished 27th after dropping out with electrical problems. It was an unceremonious end to his IndyCar career. Meanwhile, there was a new Ongais in racing. Danny's son Brian won the Formula Ford title at the SCCA runoffs in Road Atlanta. 24 hours later, he was disqualified by inspectors who didn't like how his rebuilt carburetor was polished. Brian then made the move in 1988 to the American Racing Series, now the Indy Next Series.
Brian Ongais, his daddy, famous at the Brickyard.
In 1988, Danny returned to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The car lasted a few hours before falling out with engine failure. It appeared that would be the end of Danny Ongais' racing career.
Ongais undoubtedly is the most exciting race driver to come on the scene in any type of racing in a great number of years.
The quickest funny car in the business is driven by Danny Ongais.
Danny Ongais wins his 4th United States Auto Club. Up into the short straightaway, brushes the wall with his rear right tire.
Danny Ongais pulls out and is on his way.
Consider the Indy cars. Well, this year they will race in separate series. There'll be the IndyCar World Series and the new Indy Racing League.
At 57 years old, Ongais had the urge to race again in the new Indy Racing League, chasing the Indy 500 one more time. Danny was at the second IRL race in Phoenix, spotting for John Paul Jr. He reached a deal to drive for the team at Indy. He would race a 1993 Lola, owned by Butch Brickell and prepared by Paul's team. The small budget for the team meant they didn't begin practice until the Friday before the final weekend of qualifying. That would give them 2 days of practice before a qualifying run on Sunday. On Friday, Danny ran a top speed of 208.459 miles per hour, but on that very day, tragedy struck once more.
We take you immediately to Indianapolis Motor Speedway for an update on the condition of the pole sitter Scott Brayton, who suffered a bad accident about 4 hours ago.
May 17th, 1996, 4 p.m. Race car driver Scott Brayton, 37, of Coldwater, Michigan, died at 12:50 p.m. local time today at Methodist Hospital of Indiana. Brayton's death was due to injuries sustained in an accident which occurred at 12:17 p.m. today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway during practice for this year's Indianapolis 500.
And of course, the decision that they have to make, are they getting this car ready for a spare car, or will they actually try and put someone else in the race car? We don't want to speculate, but obviously that would be the two reasons why they'd bring this car out at this time.
The big guy right there is Larry Curry, and Jerry Punch is standing by with him. Let's see if we can get an answer to that question.
And yesterday's turn of events makes us all come out here today and operate with a very heavy heart and a tear in our eye. But Scotty was a great competitor, and he was a good racer. He was a great qualifier, and as he proved on Saturday. But he would be upset with me right now. I mean, for a long time, he looked to me for direction when we was running the car, and
so much emotion.
On Saturday, Danny completed his refresher test and ran a top speed of 220.194 miles per hour, close to what it would take to qualify on bump day.
Picture is live. Ongais back at Indy after a decade, trying to get Butch Brickell's car up to speed.
After Brayton's death, Al Unser was the #1 choice for Team Menard, but Unser insisted he would stay retired. The team instead used him as a consultant in their driver's search. John Menard wanted a veteran who knew Brayton, someone who would treat the situation with the respect it deserved. Perhaps remembering how he got his 4th Indy win in 1987, Unser suggested the one man he thought deserved the ride.
Let's go back to the decision that surprised a lot of people this morning. The big question for Team Menard after the fatal crash involving Scott Brayton, the pole sitter for this race. #1, would they run the car? And #2, if they elected to run the car, who would drive it? Decision #1 I don't think was terribly surprising, because the team felt that to quit, to pull the car, to go home with their tails between their legs would not have been what Scott Brayton wanted, and so they did not make that decision. The decision instead put Danny Ongais in the car. So Danny Ongais becomes the driver for the car, and the man of few words had this to say about getting back in an IndyCar after 10 years.
The track felt about the same as it had when I was last year. The speeds didn't seem to, my perception of the speeds didn't seem to change. It was me having to work. I was a little behind until I caught up to the cars. The speeds was comfortable, and when I got close to the speeds that I needed to be running at, everything blended well.
And you weren't surprised to see that reaction from Ongais?
No, I wasn't surprised. The fact that he said it shouldn't be a problem getting back into the car, because driving a race car is kind of like getting back on a bicycle. But the tough thing is, he has been running other cars, but not at this kind of speed. Your concentration needs time to develop. I think Ongais will be fine as far as running speed out here in practice, but when it comes to the race, you know, these guys have been running all the time, running in traffic, running at these kind of speeds, will be at an advantage. I think that there's got to be some concern about him not having actually run here for over 10 years now, coming out to actually race at this place with one of the fastest cars that's here.
Danny Ongais is in this car. This is a 62 car. This is not the car that Scott Brayton qualified for the pole. This is a mule car. All they're doing is trying to get Ongais comfortable in the car, get him up to speed, and then, like we said, it's going to be a day just to get comfortable for Danny Ongais, and he will not step into the car that he will run on race day until carburation day this coming Thursday. So kind of an interesting situation here, but we'll just have to wait and see how it unfolds as the afternoon goes along.
Now, we understand that this is the first time that Danny Ongais has actually sat in that car. Larry Curry told us that he did run the number 62 machine, but this car, number 32, will be the first time he's ever actually taken it out on the course, and it's the fastest car in the field.
The car that won the pole, the death of the pole sitter Scott Brayton, provides this opportunity for Ongais. 2 days past his 54th birthday, he climbs in the car that he will drive in his 11th Indianapolis 500.
Ongais joined a team that, like him, had something to prove. Team Menard had never won an IndyCar race. His teammate Tony Stewart was a rookie, trying to prove sprint car drivers could still handle Indianapolis. Eddie Cheever was an F1 veteran who hadn't yet won an IndyCar, and Mark Dismore also had a bad crash in Indy in his past. But Ongais had a huge task in front of him. It had been 10 years since he had last raced in the Indy 500, in cars that were 20 miles per hour slower. And now he was put in the fastest car in the field, replacing a popular driver who lost his life. And he would do it with only 17 laps of practice in the car. But it was on this day in 1996 that Danny Ongais would finally enjoy one of his finest performances.
May 26, 1996, 16th Street and Georgetown Road on the west side of Indianapolis, Indiana. The same real estate that gave birth to the world's greatest racecourse back in 1909. But today, a new era begins at the Indianapolis 500. It's race day in Indianapolis.
Well, the name Danny Ongais has always been synonymous with speed, and here he is after a 10-year absence from this race, back, starting at the tail end of the pack. Danny, you've been out of this type of racing for so long. What are you feeling right now?
Normal race morning jitters here. Some butterflies and some anxiety.
Any concerns?
None whatsoever.
He's back. He's always been fast. He's in a fast car, starting from the back of the pack.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
Now there is Danny Ongais as he pulls away a little bit late, perhaps a tribute to Scott Brayton.
The rest pretty much lined up as they come through four. Head toward the start-finish line. Here to call the start of the race, Bob Jenkins.
The green flag is out from Dwayne Sweeney, and the 1996 Indianapolis 500 is underway.
16 laps complete. The pace car already off onto the pit area as Tony Stewart picks the pace back up. Coming back to the green flag, and we're racing once again. Boy, look at the battle back in the center of the field as Stewart pulls away. They were 5 wide for a second there. Salazar trying to defend his position against Roberto Guerrero, and another car spins. This time, the 32
Danny
car,
Ongais.
that is Danny Ongais, who had moved up to 19th place from 32nd and then gets in trouble on the restart, and we're yellow once again. This is looking at it.
I don't know what happened
high
there,
in the
but
groove.
he just looked like maybe he just stood on the gas too hard and turned that car sideways.
He just busted the rear tires loose, Danny, just as you thought there, and came around. The lucky part of it is he was going awful slow, which means it's easy to break the rear tires loose, but by the same token, it didn't go fast enough to get out and hit the wall.
Danny Ongais, they got in and got him out quickly, but just as he was exiting the pits, he stalled the engine, and it took him at least an extra 10 to 15 seconds to get it restarted. So although Ongais dodged the bullet with the spin, he had some problems in the pits.
The stall in the pits put him a lap down. The team tried an alternate strategy to get back on the lead lap.
Here we are. In position number 1 is car 70, and that is Davy Jones. Second, 91, Lazier. Third, 21, Guerrero. 10th, 32, Ongais.
And we understand that Danny Ongais may be having a problem heading toward turn number 3.
And Ongais is slowing down. Another Menard car slowing down off the pace. But
rather, Danny Ongais was slow there in turn number 3 a couple of laps to go, but he's back up to speed. Here's Vince Welsh in Danny Ongais' pit.
Well, the crew is somewhat confused because Danny came over and told them that the car had quit, and then all of a sudden it fired up again. So whether or not he just temporarily lost power, but the crew did not bring him in, and the crew seems somewhat confused, but Danny Ongais is still on the track, and he's back up to speed.
Around midway, an electrical failure shut the engine off on track. The car restarted, but he lost another lap and had no digital dashboard for the rest of the race. Despite his troubles, Ongais finished 7th.
At the end of the 500 miles, your first place position is 91, Buddy Lazier, the champion. 7th, 32, Danny Ongais.
Danny Ongais. Had AC Matsuda with a good run. Robbie Buell also on Ongais' run. Spectacular. Scott Sharp. Eddie Cheever.
For a team devastated by tragedy, Danny was the top finisher for Team Menard. After the race, thoughts turned to Scott Brayton's 2-year-old daughter, and if she someday saw footage from the race, she would see her father's car take the checkered flag thanks to Danny Ongais, and that felt like a win. Performance didn't lead to more races with Team Menard, but Ongais kept trying. He started 1997 with a ride in the IRL, driving for Chitwood Motorsports, a car owned by Joey Chitwood, the future president of Daytona International Speedway. Danny finished 13th at Walt Disney World Speedway, and then was replaced by a driver who brought money. While no one knew it because his real age was a secret, Ongais was attempting to become the oldest man to ever qualify for the Indianapolis 500. He would turn 59 years old 3 days before race day.
Danny Ongais.
Ongais suffered a slight concussion and was hospitalized overnight. Just like in the past, track doctors wouldn't clear him to race. He was replaced by John Paul Jr., who led 39 laps and finished 7th. Danny would never drive an IndyCar again. Ongais did return to racing, however, in November 2002, when he drove in the Grand Am race at Daytona and finished 5th in class. And like that, Ongais' racing career was over, nearly 45 years after it began. Danny was inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in 2000 and the Hawaiian Sports Hall of Fame in 2001. That year, Ongais was named to NHRA's list of their 50 greatest drivers. Ongais retreated to California and lived the quiet life he always maintained. In March 2015, John Andretti went looking for Ongais to get his autograph on the Stinger, an IndyCar signed by Indy 500 competitors to celebrate the race's 100th anniversary. After searching, Andretti found Danny in California. About his meeting with Ongais, Andretti wrote, quote, "It would bring tears to your eyes to see how much pain he was in, more than 30 years after his worst crash. One shoe was adjusted to the length of his leg to allow him to walk. Despite that, he was really pleasant." On February 26, 2022, Danny Ongais passed away at the age of 82. He took his secret age to the grave, and all of his obituaries said he was 79. Danny was survived by his 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and his partner of 35 years, Patricia. Danny Ongais doesn't appear engraved in silver on the Borg-Warner trophy, although he had fair chances to make his mark. But within him was the heart of a champion, admired by his peers. Mario Andretti called him a quiet lion and a likable guy in every way. A fan favorite, he was a man whose entire focus was on driving race cars and did his best to avoid any kind of attention for it. A symbol of determination, He kept fighting for his goals, even when they threatened to kill him. When the best drivers are those who can go into the turns just a little deeper, Ongais will leave a legacy of standing on the gas.